Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are going to stick to Japan and we're going to return to a brewery that's featured on the channel a couple of times before. Now, these guys are a very recent addition to the Japanese beer scene, but they've built up a very good reputation for themselves in that short lifetime thus far. They've been very diverse in their output of beers, and in my opinion, they are one of the Japanese breweries that you really need to keep an eye on going forward if you're a big craft beer nerd like me. But the beer that we're going to have a look at today is a fairly recent release from what I gather. I think they've done this beer once or twice, but it's a style that I have tried from this brewery before and one that I know they can do very well, but it's also a sub-style that I haven't tried from them. So I'm quite curious to see what their take on this one is going to be like, and I've heard very good things about this beer. So needless to say, I'm very, very curious to see what this beer is going to have in store for us. Hopefully it's another good beer. Hopefully it makes for an interesting review. And as always, I hope that you guys watching enjoy my take on this one as well. So yeah, for this review then, we're going to head a little bit north of me here in Osaka up to Mie Prefecture. To be specific, we are going to go to the city of Ise, which is home to the Shinto religion, of course, very famous for its shrines. But that means that we're going to have a look at another beer from the wonderful Himitsu Beer, or Himitsu Biru, as you would say in Japanese. So this particular beer is called Kujira No Tamago, which translates into English as whale egg, but it comes in at 12% ABV, and this one is being described as a milky triple IPA. Now, I've seen the colour of this one in pictures, so that's the reason why I don't describe it as being a New England hazy triple IPA. But yeah, this one is supposed to be very, very good. I've heard very good things about this one from a certain Jordan of Jordan in Japan, or Jordan Outsider Inside Japan, if I'm remembering his channel correctly. He lives very close to Issa, of course, good friend of mine, and he loves his craft beer as well. So make sure you check out the link to his channel in the video description below. So whenever we review a Himitsu beer or an Isakadoya beer, we always give Jordan a shout out. So yeah, hopefully we can go and visit a future tap room from these guys together and do an out and about video. But yeah, Kujira No Tamago, the whale egg, a 12% triple IPA from the wonderful Himitsu Beer, a very new and up and coming brewery in Ise, Mie here in Japan. So, as always with my reviews then, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting though, just fast forward. All the usual links can be found in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Himitsu Beer so far, and I will no doubt do more at some point in the fairly near future, but there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The support that you give is massively appreciated, and remember, you can go into the channel homepage and search for beer using the geography tagging system. So just go in there, use the little search bar, put in your hometown, state, county, province, whatever you like. If I've reviewed beer from the area that you search for, that will pop up. Failing that though, you can check out the playlist of beers from different countries. You'll find this one in the Japanese playlist along with a number of other things. That's being added to very regularly, of course, because I am over here in Japan quite often visiting my son, and I always review some beers while I'm here. But do make sure you check out the playlist of beers from other countries as well, because there are some very interesting things on the channel these days, even if I do say so myself. But if you're particularly interested in Japanese beer, do make sure you check out my friend Neva over at Japanese Craft Beer Reviews. I'll put the link to his channel in the video description below as well. But yeah, let's go on to my brewery notes then, and I'll tell you a wee bit about Himitsu Beer once again. And I will say, these guys do have a very, very good pedigree. But yeah, Himitsu Beer then, as I've mentioned to you already, is based in Ise in Mie Prefecture in the Kansai region of Japan, and the company was founded back in 2022 by Yabuki Keita along with Sasaki Moroki. So the two men were high school classmates in Ujiyama High School, and they also attended the same university in Ishikawa, where they studied agriculture and food science. But after graduation, Yabuki went on to work for a publishing company, while Sasaki went on to work in research for a sake manufacturer. But apparently they met again at a high school reunion, and this rekindled a desire for them to do something together. So they went on to work for different breweries, with Sasaki working for Isakadoya, in Ise and Mie Prefecture, of course, a brewery that's featured on the channel many times before, while Yabuki went on to work for Yoroko in Kanagawa Prefecture. But after a number of years of working for these breweries, they decided that it was time for them to start their own brewery together. So the brewery itself could be found in a barn that once belonged to Yabuki's grandparents in the Futami area of the city, and they received finance through crowdfunding to get their brewing equipment, and then they renovated the barn almost completely by themselves, apart from laying the floor and the electrical work as well, which of course needs special licenses. But they liked the idea of being what they would term a farmhouse brewery, and so they produced some of the ingredients for the beer themselves on the surrounding land, such as, you know, rye and wheat and things like this, and they do plan to increase this for the brewery going forward. But they produced their first beers in 2023, and they've been very, very prolific and gained a really solid reputation. But apparently the brewery motto is a brewery that creates a place to belong, and the name Himitsu translates into English as secret. So the name Himitsu Beer is like a secret beer, or Himitsu Brewery is a secret brewery. But the idea is that they want to make a beer so good that you want to keep it a secret, but that you also want to share it with someone. So I think that's a nice little proverb. It kind of comes across like some of the meanings of the haiku poems you get here in Japan. But as of December 2024, which is the time of filming, they have produced 125 different kinds of beer according to Untappd. I've mainly tried... well, this will be the second IPA that I've had from these guys, but I also had a stout, and I can safely say that these guys can do both sides of the spectrum very, very well. And I do have a sour beer to try, which you'll see either this time or a little bit later in January or in early February on the channel. But yeah, a very, very solid brewery, one that I would highly recommend, and I think you can safely say that these guys are one of the very much up-and-coming Japanese craft beer breweries. But yeah, that is everything I can really tell you about Himitsu Beer for the moment. If you want to learn more about these guys, you can check out the brewery website, you can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn a little bit more about all of the different beers that these guys have done. So yeah, let's go on then and have a wee look at the beer itself. So this can is of course 350 milliliters. If memory serves me correctly, I bought this one at a shop called Binge up in Nagoya when I was doing some out and about videos, and yeah, I saw this one and Jordan was with me and he told me that this beer is absolutely glorious. So yeah, this should be really quite interesting. But there you can see the whale on the front there, Kujira. So yeah, this beer, as I said earlier, is called Kujira No Tamago. Tamago, of course, in Japanese is egg, and then if you say no, that is the kind of possessive particle, if we can call it that. Plain silver top on the can there, 350 milliliters this one. It also shows you on the back here, Koshihikari, which is, I don't know how to describe it, it's kind of like a Japanese herb. So I'm not sure if it did talk in one of the descriptions that I saw on a wholesaler's website about, it did talk about local milk and things like that too. So I'm not sure if there is actually some local Ise or Mie Prefecture milk in this one. There is some very, very good milk up there, and there's quite a lot of good beef as well, come to think of it. So yeah, I'm not sure if they've actually put a little bit of the local milk in this one, along with a little bit of Koshihikari. Can't pronounce that word. But yeah, a 12% milky triple IPA as they're calling it. I think this one should be very, very interesting. The whale egg milky triple IPA. Let's get it out into the glass then and see how we go. I'm really just very, very curious about this. The first beer I tried from these guys was a Belgian stout, and it was lovely. But then I also had last time this IPA that they used the same method for making milky kind of broth in ramen to make their IPA. So that was one of the best Japanese craft beers I think I've ever tried. So I'm really, really very curious about this one. But yeah, before the head disappears then, you can see that it poured with about a quarter finger of a frothy, I would say kind of cream coloured head, but that's faded away to be a very thin foamy layer quite quickly, and you can see around the edge of the glass there, some of those bubbles are just lingering there. So you can see a few medium-sized bubbles on the base and some kind of foamy ones just moving further up. But yeah, colour-wise, I'm actually quite surprised at this beer because it looks a lot more like a West Coast IPA, and of course these days, if you're talking about a milky triple IPA, the first instinct is to think about a New England hazy beer actually. But yeah, maybe it does have a little bit of some of the local milk in here. That's quite interesting. But remember, the colour of your beer depends on a few things. One, the type of malts that you use. This goes a long way to determining your EBC rating. Two, the length of your wort boil is going to play a role, because the longer you boil the wort, the more the sugars caramelise, and thus you get a darker coloured beer. But any barrel aging that you do or adjuncts you put into the beer will affect its colour as well. And when it comes to a West Coast IPA, you don't often, or well, any kind of IPA to be honest, you don't often have to care about adjuncts, but if you do put them in there, they will change the colour quite a little bit. But yeah, it does have a wee bit of like a natural haze to it, but you can see if I put my fingers behind the glass there, it does, you know, there is a little bit of transparency in there as well. One or two big bubbles sticking toward the side of the glass, a few little ones going up toward the kind of surface of the liquid there. But yeah, all in all, it looks just, you know, it does look more like a West Coast IPA, this one. So the appearance isn't quite what I was expecting in this one. But if you know Himitsu Beer, you know that it's all about the flavour with these guys, to be quite honest. And they are quite creative too. So that's something that I do really like about this brewery, and something I do really quite appreciate. So yeah, I don't think we need to say too much more about the appearance of this one. Let's dive in and have a wee look at the aroma of the beer. Oh, that's not what I expected. Now, I'm going to say, based on the aroma, I would be extremely curious to see the brew sheet of this beer, because it's got this, when you go into it, it's got this berry-like aroma to it. It's almost like cranberries, to be honest with you. I did not expect that from this beer. Yeah, it really has this almost like cranberry strawberry type thing jumping out of the aroma at you. I mean, there's a few hops that could do that. Enigma might give you a little bit of that. It gives you this kind of red berry type quality. Barbe Rouge from France could do that. It gives you this kind of strawberry note. What's the other one? Oh, there is another hop that can give you a straight up kind of strawberry type quality. But it's, you know, the name of it's gone out of my head. But this beer, as soon as you go into it, you get this strawberry cranberry type quality out of it straight away. I did not expect that at all. Going by the aroma too, and from what I kind of read on the wholesale thing, I think this beer might have a little bit of rice in it. I will say too, if this was just put in front of me and I was blindfolded, I don't think I would pick this out as being a beer, in all honesty. Yeah, I would probably think that this one is, I think I'd probably think this, I mean, it could pass for like a kettle sour or something like that, but the aroma of this is really, really unusual. I did not expect that, really did not. But, I mean, Himitsu Beer, the other two beers that we've had from these guys, the Belgian Stout is quite an unusual style, but it's still a conventional beer. Then the Triple IPA, I think that was 10% or so if I remember rightly. That one was really nice. Honestly, one of the best craft beers I've had from Japan, but again, it just wasn't conventional. These guys are doing some really kind of wacky stuff, but yeah, I'm just trying to think how to describe this for you because, as I say, it's supposed to be an IPA, but it smells like a kettle sour. Um, yeah, oh, where do we start with this? Um, let's just try and break this aroma down and describe it for you more in depth because I've been thrown off my guard with this a little bit, to be honest with you. Um, so, the backbone of the beer, you do have a little bit of a kind of fresh white bready bread crust, a wee bit of wood, not so much cracker in this one. There's a wee bit of white bread in there. I'm almost getting a little bit of vanilla out of this one. Maybe a bit of like Werther's original butter candy butterscotch. And when the thing is 12%, having a wee bit of that brown sugary kind of character from the alcohol isn't unheard of. But it's really quite difficult to pinpoint too much in this malt base. There's maybe a bit of sweet brown bread, of white bread. I mean, you're getting the usual things that you'd expect, and like a wee bit of Werther's original butter candy butterscotch, but it has this kind of almost vanilla, strawberry, yogurty type character to it. At the back of the nose, I'm getting a little bit of, there is a little bit of yeasty character in there, but generally speaking, this beer, it really reminds me of, the aroma of this one really reminds me of like the Munch Bunch. I used to get yogurts in my lunchbox that my mum put in there at school called Munch Bunch. It really reminds me of the strawberry Munch Bunch yogurts that I used to eat back in Scotland back in, what would that be, the 90s, the late 90s and 2000s. Really did not expect this from the aroma at all. And just, from the style of the beer. I don't think we can really say too much more about that side of the beer. On the green component then, because it is an IPA, you have to remember with your IPAs there are three types of hoppings that you can do. You've got early edition hopping, which takes place within the first hour of the wort boil. That's going to give you a very deep, dank green component. You've got late edition hopping, which takes place within the last half hour of the wort boil. That gives you a very bright green component. It gives you a wee bit of bitterness, but mainly flavour and aroma. Then dry hopping, which takes place after the wort boil is complete, is all about flavour and aroma. West Coast IPAs tend to use all three types of hopping, which is why they're deeper, danker, more oily, whereas New England IPAs use late edition and dry hopping for the most part, which is why they're softer and more juicy. This beer for me, the green component comes across more like a New England IPA. There's a little tiny touch of earthiness there, but it's quite bright and floral and mostly grassy, I would say, yeah. I think, for me, when you take in the aroma of this one, it's mostly a grassy kind of component that comes out of it, and it's quite a wet smelling green component too. I think I've mentioned the fruity side of things. In this one, it's the fruity side of this beer is mostly like strawberries, cranberries, maybe like even a little bit of fig or something like that. You could maybe argue for a little bit of gooseberry or something in there, but actually the fruity side of this one smells kind of like the Kopparberg mixed berries cider almost. The aroma of this one really reminds me of that, actually. A really unusual aroma from this one, I have to say. I do wonder if some of those kind of fruity notes are from the Koshi Hikari, actually. This beer, aroma-wise, this is really not what I expected out of this one, I have to say. So, if you do get this beer, then take a bit of time to just ponder over that aroma, because it's very, very quirky, I have to say. Let's have a wee look at this one then and see what it's all about. I think it's time to taste this. So this is Kujira No Tamago, the whale egg, a 12% milky triple IPA, which smells like a strawberry yogurt, apparently, from the wonderful Himitsu Beer. in Ise Mie Prefecture here in Japan. Big shout out again, of course, to Jordan and to Neva in this video. Let's get stuck in. Slange, skål, cheers, kampai. I don't know what this is, but it's pretty nice. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I will say, in all honesty, I'm not quite sure what this beer is going for, but it's again really, really nicely done. When I think about the other beers that I've had from Himitsu, this one is a little bit more, how would you say, it's a little bit more unusual, if you like. I'm trying to remember the name. Let me just look this up. Of the last one. So the other one was Kyoku Hamatora-san, which was like Mr. Mr. Hamatora's like ramen broth or something like that. It had the name of. That one was more like a kind of conventional triple IPA almost, and it, you know, it was more kind of, it made a bit more sense as a beer almost, and the Belgian stout was really very, very nice. This one is something just completely unusual and completely different, I think we could say, but you know, you want this level of experimentation in Japan. It is a little bit of an almost Japanese cultural thing. They've got more of a tendency to take in technology, for example, from somewhere else and refine it and make it better. To do something completely different isn't something that you find all that often in Japan. Just my personal opinion. Feel free to argue with me on that in the comments section below. But yeah, this beer is something just completely different that I don't think I've ever come across before. So, you know, I'm going to say thumbs up to Himitsu for making me think a little bit, and I'm curious to try some other things from these guys. Jordan tried this one and told me, he, in his words, I think he said it was glorious, and I can see why he likes this. So, as I said, I like this. I'm just trying to figure out what it is, to be honest. Because yeah, I will say the flavour that you get out of this one really matches the aroma. But if I was to taste this blind, would I say it's a triple IPA? I don't know. It tastes like a mix of beer and like strawberry yogurt. It really tastes just, you know, it kind of feels like a combination of that. So let's just go through this beer and try and break down the flavours a little bit using the system that I've always used. Middle third of your palate then. The backbone of this beer, you've got a lovely kind of, there is a little bit of a kind of fresh, white bread crusty character there. As you move further forward on that, you do get the little touch of woodiness. I mean, I think that could just be my palate, but yeah, there's a wee bit of woodiness comes out of this beer into the aftertaste. You've got a little bit of kind of Jacob's cream cracker sort of thing. Then there's a layer of kind of wholemeal brown bread. That comes out a bit more into the aftertaste. Then you've got a layer of kind of white bready character. I do think that this beer has a little touch of wheaty character in it because you can feel there's a more dense white bready character in there. I'm pretty sure there's rice in this as well, because above the wheaty white bread you can feel this sort of oily layer to the beer, and I think that the rice is really contributing to the mouthfeel in this one. I do actually quite like it when they use a little bit of rice in IPAs. I think it can, it just gives you that slight touch of sweetness, and it can really give you a slight oiliness to the mouthfeel as well. Um, yeah. So yeah, above the kind of wheaty layer, there's that sort of oily, ricey character, and in the dead centre of your palate, there's a little circle there, and that's showing you the boozy character of the beer. And with this one being 12%, you do have a little bit of that. I don't think caramel is quite the right word for this one, but it's like a concentrate. If you think about McVitie's digestive biscuits, as I say, I don't know how good a descriptor that is, flavour wise, for Japanese people that watch the video, but yeah, um, the flavour that you get in the middle of the palate is like a kind of concentrated, sweet, biscuity character. There's a little bit of a more grainy biscuit around the edge, and a wee touch of that kind of caramelly note. But yeah, middle third of your palate, I think we've described that quite well now. But yeah, you just get this within the kind of bready characters. It feels like you have this almost like mix of vanilla and strawberry yogurt flavour just emanating from that. It's a very unusual beer, this, but I'm quite fascinated by it almost. I like things. After 4,000 odd beer reviews, you want things that will test your palate a little bit, and this beer certainly does that. Yeah, so that's the middle third of the palate covered. Let's go to the back third of the palate then. As I've often said, sweeter flavours come out further forward in the palate, more dry and bitter flavours come out further back. So I'm wondering how much of this kind of strawberry yogurt character is actually this Koshi Hikari that they have in the beer. So yeah, for me, if you go to that border region between middle and back third of your palate, you get that little bit of kind of bready build up, and there a wee bit of brown bread in the base, mainly white bread above that. The base of the back third of your beer, you've got a little bit of back third of your palate, sorry, you've got that little bit of kind of white bready bread crust, a wee bit of cracker, of course, the brown bread layer above that, which is a little bit lighter, taller, and more airy, then the white bready layer above that, which again is a little bit lighter, taller, and more airy, both a bit drier. Then you've got the denser, wheaty character sitting on top of that as well. Yeah, on top of all of that, you've got a nice yeasty kind of note coming out of the beer too. So yeah, the yeasty side of this beer for me is kind of interesting. Like, it has this dense, kind of more grainy, almost slightly, well, no, not rye bread. It's got this more dense wholemeal, brown bready character to it at its core. Then round the edge, it's got a slightly more grainy bready character, and then yeah, around the very very edge of that, it's got a little bit more of a yeah, kind of bread crusty type quality to it. So yeah, I do like how that pieces together as well. Interesting array of stuff in there. So yeah, dense brown bread in the middle, then a bit more of a lighter grainy brown bread, and then yeah, the kind of bread crusty character. But definitely, yeah, the back third of your palate, you can feel the flavour is taller. Then as you move further forward into the middle third of your palate, it just kind of condenses down a wee bit. In terms of green component with this one then, for me, green component wise, the beer has quite a soft and wet green component. In the back corners of the palate, the beer's just a little bit earthy, but that's not too much. There's a wee touch of herbally character in there as well, but yeah, as you move further forward along the sides of the palate, it's a little bit more kind of floral in there, and then round the front curve of the tongue, it's just that little bit lighter and more grassy. So yeah, I do like how all of that kind of pieces together in this one. It's lovely. Yeah. is nice. For me, it really does taste like a kind of boozy strawberry yogurt, but it's got the kind of kettle sour mouthfeel. I think that's a good summary of the beer, actually. But let's just round off the flavour section of the video with a look at that front third of your palate. The border region between front third and middle third of your palate, you get that nice little bit of kind of bready build up in there, the brown bread in the base, white bread on top, maybe a wee touch of the wheaty character in there. I do find you get a little touch of wheaty bite out of this one into the aftertaste. But yeah, the base of the front third of your palate, then you've got a nice kind of little bit of, yeah, the fresh white bready bread crust, a wee bit of the cracker, the brown bread, the white bread, and then yeah, a wee bit of the wheaty note in there. And of course, as I say, sweeter flavours come out on the front third of your palate, and it really has it feels like the bread is kind of infused with this sort of vanilla, strawberry, yogurty type thing. And of course, it's just come into my head that the elephant in the room that we've not mentioned is the milkshake IPA. So yeah, maybe that is a good way to describe this one as well, as a sort of milkshake quadruple IPA, because at 12% ABV, in honesty, they're calling this one a triple IPA, but I think at 12%, that's really when you start to get into the kind of quadruple type category. So yeah, that kind of makes sense. If they called this one a milkshake IPA, I think everything would kind of click into place, to be honest with you. The more that I drink of it, I'm thinking, yeah, milkshake IPA. But yeah, on top of the malty side on that front third of your palate, you get that nice oily bubble where the juicy fruity esters roll their way out of the beer. I'd be very curious to know what hops they've used in this. So for me, like I said earlier, this beer, on that fruity side of things, when you go to the back of that front third of your palate, it's like a slightly more, it's almost like, can you say, dank strawberry? And you've got a little bit of that character in there, and as you move further forward, yeah, it's a kind of juicier strawberry, a little bit of fig almost, and then yeah, in the front half of that front third of your palate, within that oily bubble from the fruity hops, or the fruity esters from the hops, it's more of a kind of gooseberry note, and there's a bit of a juicy lime in there as well. So yeah, the way that all of that kind of pieces together in this one is really quite interesting. But yeah, I think it's kind of clicked for me in the last little bit of the tasting section that this one, yeah, it's a milkshake IPA, this. It's really interesting, this one. I think it's one that's had me very, very curious. I would be curious to see these guys do like a big, regular West Coast IPA, a big triple West Coast IPA, or quadruple West Coast IPA at 12% ABV. I think that could be very interesting, because the New England one that I had, I think that was about 10, the Mr. What was it, Kyoku Hamatora-san, that was a big 10%, and that was lovely. This one, I think, could well be the strongest milkshake IPA that I've ever reviewed on the channel. So again, Himitsu Beer giving me new stuff, new material for the channel that I've not covered before. But I can feel this going to my head just now, so I'm probably rambling a little bit. But yeah, it's really kind of clicked for me in the last little bit there. This is a quadruple milkshake IPA. So I would say to them to maybe change the sort of marking on this one and call it a milkshake, a triple milkshake IPA or a quadruple milkshake IPA, because it's 12% ABV. I think 10 is your kind of mark for the triple, and then 12 is when you start to get into quadruple. But yeah, I think a quadruple milkshake IPA is a good way to describe this one. But not hazy, obviously, it's quite a clear beer, this. But yeah, really interesting nonetheless. Quite strawberry, Barbe Rouge, Enigma hops are the ones that come to mind. So yeah, a lot of strawberry, a lot of maybe a good little bit of fig, black currant maybe as well, and yeah, a little bit of gooseberry. So Enigma is the main hop that comes to mind. Barbe Rouge is another candidate. And what is the other one? It's not Talus. There is another hop that can give you a good little bit of strawberry. I've had it quite often recently. But yeah, really interesting flavour profile from this beer. Let's round off the review then with a wee quick look at the mouthfeel, otherwise I'll go on forever. So for me, this beer, it's very oily and very slick. I'm tempted to say bottom end or full bodied, but the carbonation is very, very smooth. It has a very, very clean mouthfeel. As I've often said, Japanese beer has this, Japanese drinkability element to it. Beer is viewed as something that should be clean and go down easy. You can feel that with this beer, even though it's 12% ABV. It has that sort of Japanese sake, nihonshu oiliness to it. IBU wise, I mean, this is 20 IBUs at the absolute most. I'd be surprised if it was more. The malt base has a wee bit of dryness underneath, a kind of smoothness in the middle, and a more oily, slick character on top. The fruity side of this one, again, is quite oily and slick. But overall, this is quite a sweet, almost like yogurty type beer. Yogurty is maybe not obviously it's not as kind of hazy and things like that as yogurty would suggest, but yeah, having that oily slickness that this one has, I think is very, very interesting. Yeah, I think the way this goes together is really quite nice, and I've enjoyed this one. It's tested my palate a little bit, and it's shown me another side of Himitsu Beer, but I would say market this one as a milkshake IPA rather than a kind of milky Triple IPA. I don't know if that's a kind of English mistake, but yeah, I think that would go a long way to kind of clearing up things with what this beer actually is. A quadruple milkshake IPA, I think, is a good descriptor of this one. But yeah, I think we can leave it at that for this beer. This one was the Kujira No Tamago Whale Egg, 12% milky Triple IPA, as they're calling it, from the wonderful Himitsu Beer in Ise, Mie Prefecture here in Japan. A really interesting beer that has tested my palate a little bit. So yeah, once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comments section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Himitsu Beer as well, and we will no doubt return to these guys again at some point in the fairly near future. But until the next time, Slàinte, skål, cheers. Check out my social media, check out Himitsu Beer's social media, check out my friends Nevitt and Jordan. You'll find the links to their channels in the description below. And yeah, enjoy some good beers. But until then, Slàinte, skål, cheers, kampai. This has gone to my head. This is a rubbish ending. Till the next time, ciao just now.